Have our moderator, Dr. Ram sir. He is a seasoned cybersecurity and risk management leader with 22 years of cross-industry experience, spanning across automotive, healthcare, BFSI, and other sectors. He specializes in cybersecurity, governance, risk, and compliances with a strong track record of building and scaling. He serves as a Volvo Group in a leadership role in cybersecurity. He holds a PhD in information security governance along with an MBA in human resource and an MCA along with security and privacy certifications. Please welcome Ram sir. Okay, so with that, we introduce our first speaker, Shivakumar Dakshinamurthy sir. He is a seasoned technology management leader with over 25 years of experience in IT infrastructure, cybersecurity, and AI governance. He head enterprise services support and contribute as a member of AI security research team. He is holding a diverse positions which include head of support, managing large government accounts, security projects, and he is the head of service and support and AI security researcher, and he is a Lenovo technology. Yeah, sorry, he's service delivery leader and cyber security Lenovo technology. Sorry. Okay, so that we introduce our third speaker, Ritika Nayak. She is currently working as a data privacy and cybersecurity consultant at UI with close to 2 years of experience working on privacy, compliance, and cybersecurity practices. With that, please welcome Ritika Nayak. Our third and final speaker is Rishabh Pinesh Mehta. He is a seasoned cybersecurity leader with over a decade of experience in governance, risk and compliances, IT audit, supply chain, TRPM, data privacy, cloud security and cyber resilience. He serves as a cybersecurity and data protection leader at Astra Labs. Rishabh holds multiple industry recognized certifications in data privacy, cloud security and other areas in GRC and data protection domain. He actively contributes and mentors for aspiring professionals. So with that, we welcome Rishabh Pinesh.
Good afternoon, everyone. There's no energy.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks to Michael Joshua and team for having me here. A nice Saturday morning we are spending. Very happy and gratified to see joining here. Thanks to everyone. Just check this. It's very gratifying to see so many of us coming on a Saturday morning when we have so many other things to do. Thanks to all your enthusiasm to come and join this community on this day and be part of this great learning experience. How's the experience so far? Good? Yes? It's worth the time that you came? So all the credit goes to Michael Joshua, right? Cool. So yeah, that's a very nice gesture. We should all applaud him, right? And today's panel topic is very interesting in my viewpoint. The topic is privacy paradox in Gen AI, balancing synthetic innovation with data sovereignty. So you all know what is synthetic data, right? The data that is being artificially created. It's a kind of a new set of data that is used primarily for privacy preserving and doesn't come from a real data source, right? So AI itself generates that. And what is data sovereignty? Data sovereignty is a principle where the data is the information that is being collected in one country is subject to the laws and governance regulations of that country where it is collected, stored, or processed. Okay, so today that is data sovereignty is very critical, whether it is GDPR or DPDPA Act. Almost all the privacy regulations talk about data sovereignty, but in real world it works in a very, very different way. A lot of tug of war between multinationals, big tech companies, and the governments on this particular topic, data sovereignty. Now, with that introduction, I would want to request each of my talented panelists here to introduce themselves in one line, starting with Shiva.
Hey all. Hey all, my name is Shivakumar Dakshinamurthy. Call me Shiva shortly. So, what Michael Joshua said, something is not told, which let me tell you quickly on it. I do my PhD final year. The fun part is me and my daughter is studying at the same university. Some of you know, some of you may not know. She's a final year BTech student, I'm a final year PhD student. That's about me. The PhD from AI security governance area.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Ritika Naik. I am working as a cybersecurity and data privacy consultant with EY with around 2 years of experience. So, happy to share insights with you all. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Rusab Mehta. I work with Estera Labs and I'm leading their cybersecurity, data protection and AI governance efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Very good mix of experience here. I'm especially thankful to Ritika for stepping in the last minute. Earlier we had Velmuruga Venkatesh who was supposed to be in this panel, but due to some restrictions we had to bring in. Otherwise, we are very happy to get her on board the last minute. Less than a week she stepped up and she's here to share her insights. And being part of the consulting industry, her work actually is very hands-on. So we are happy to have her here along with Rushabh and Shiva.
So Ritika was like, I want to justify to the venue's name. I want to chime in at the last minute.
Exactly. Last minute she joined.
Last minute meeting.
Okay. Quickly, let us set the stage on this particular topic. Right. So Gen AI today, it has a lot of promise for unlocked, unprecedented value, right? But it is very hungry for data, a lot of data for training. So, but what's wrong with this entire approach is it is fundamentally challenging the core principles of data privacy, especially around data minimalization and purpose limitation, right? It actually encroaches all these frameworks, whether it is GDPR or DPDP Act, all of them have this particular principles like data minimalization and purpose limitation. This is being encroached upon by practical Gen AI solutions. So as organization race to adopt Gen AI, are we witnessing the quiet erosion of data sovereignty? That's a question. And if so, who's truly accountable? So I would want to start with Shiva on this. Over to you, Shiva.
Thanks, Ram. It's a little tricky question, I know. So let me start with some data point for all your information, right? So when you talk about AI, it's all about data. Without the data, AI is nothing, right? What you feed in massive data, the amount of output what you get it based on the input, what you're feeding in, right? Data plays a very key role here it is. By design, when you talk about technology, technology is data maximization by design. When it comes to law, they're talking about data minimization. This is a contrary in nature. That's how the technology all comes in, right? When it comes to GDPR, but specifically, I'll use one number. In March 2025, last year it is exactly last year, as per the GDPR data, they have fined 2,245 organizations, which amount to 5.6 billion euro. It's a quite a big money. You know what these are related to? These are all related to non-compliance. When you talk about non-compliance, I think Ram already discussed about data purpose, the limitation, right? The individual way, how they were collecting the information and storing the information. It's all related to the non-compliance in this area. That means while the law is there, the way the enterprise are doing it, knowingly, unknowingly, many mistakes have happened. You just Google it, you'll come to know that, you know, the big names. You list off this one. They're talking about 2 billion fine, there are 300 million fine. The famous car owning platform, also 296 million euro they're fined. You just Google it. I don't want to name them on the public forum. It's available. So the point here it is, when they talk about very specifically, I think the GDPR Article 5 talked about data minimization and the purpose domain. This area very clear. You have to do it, and also you should prove it. When controllers comes in, the regulators, when they ask, you have to prove it. If you are not prove it, you are definitely going to get fined on it. Now you can't be only in the on the statement or giving it on the letterhead alone is not. You must prove it. So when it comes to data sovereignty, of course, that area is little. We need to really think that while technology itself by design it needs a lot of data, how are you going to do minimized way? That is where the most of the organizations still figuring out. Why your data linearity, right? The lineage, where you are getting it, are you having the permission to use the data? All the things are coming on picture. As long as you can able to answer it and also prove it, right? How are you getting the data? How are you processing data? Where are you storing? As well as within the jurisdiction, you can able to prove it, you are done. But most of the cases, this area is still little gray. It's get diluted on it. But I think when it comes to accountability, I think talk about sovereignty, another one is accountability. Accountability, to my view, is more or less is clear, right? Whether it's GDPR or DPDP, the accountability is more or less is clear here. They're going and catching up the data owners, right? The data fiduciary is the owner, not individual. That enterprise is the owner. Whether you can able to give it to the some other model providers, they can able to process. That is their responsibility. But you cannot outsource your accountability. Accountability is with them only it is. In one line, yes, the answer is when it comes to data sovereignty, there is a dilution for sure. I think this bigger organizations still working on it. When it comes to accountability, more or less it's clear. That's the reason many of the law forms, the regulations, they have a straight away they can able to find and find it to them, right? So we need to be also careful about when you are using AI data, just look at it when it comes to sovereignty, right? Again, moreover, DPDP Act also it is just mirror the more or less DPDP Act is exactly mirrors some of the area under GDP Act. So we need to be careful when you are using this. Just find out how are you getting the data, where are you storing, jurisdictions are covered. Then you can able to also to prove. That's important. Not only in paper, you should be able to prove it.
Excellent. A lot of great points there, Shiva. Next to Ritika for her insights.
Thanks, Shiva sir, for your inputs. Adding on to his inputs, my opinion here is that we all are witnessing a certain erosion of data sovereignty. But it's not accidental. It is because the Gen AI is trained and designed in such a manner that it needs vast and diverse amount of data to reduce biasness and to generate the outputs. So it often clashes with the regulatory requirements like DPDP and GDPR, which talks about data minimization and purpose limitation. So the regulators are also aware about this mismatch that AI needs data, but the regulation says that less data should be fed into the system and less retention should be there. So I'll just give you one example here. When the AI lifecycle begins, it starts with feeding the data into the system, whether it is for training purpose or fine-tuning the AI systems. that time sometimes the organization loses the visibility on how the memorization is happening, how the data is getting inferred, and that is the reason where the accountability comes into the picture. So here, in my as per my knowledge, the accountability is shared, and it is often diluted. So it is shared between the model trainers, the organizations which are using the models, and lastly the regulators. So model trainers are responsible for collecting the data from different sources like public and private networks, and then feeding those information or data into the systems. They are also accountable for the retention and deletion of the data. Then comes the organizations which are using those Gen AI systems. So if they are not training the data, they are responsible for providing the inputs, the prompts, for fine-tuning those Gen AI system, and then the compliance. They are responsible for compliance like GDPR and APDP that should be applicable for those Gen AI systems, and lastly the regulators. So regulators are often lagging behind the Gen AI system because it's developing too fast. So here comes the loss of accountability. So here one point I wanted to add that the main risk is not the loss of control, it is the risk of the person who will take the responsibility of it and who will take the accountability for it. So yeah, that's all.
Awesome, well explained. Well explained. Rishabh, the question next is for you. We will discuss about the synthetic data dilemma, right? So today, synthetic data is being championed as a kind of a silver bullet for privacy preservation and for training your AI models, Gen AI models. But re-identification risks, model memorization, and also hallucination risks, all of them are giving a very different story in reality. So the question here is, how confident should CISOs and privacy officer should be realistically when synthetic data is used as a compliance shield, and what governance guardrails are non-negotiable? We want to know the guardrails, right? And how confident the powers that be it CISOs or privacy officers can be when handling synthetic data.
No, absolutely. Before I directly come to the answer part of the question, I would like to set some context. Generative AI, why we need it to make our daily operations more efficient and more effective, right? What do I mean by that is reducing the turnaround time, or probably making the processes more streamlined and optimizing it, or providing us any kind of the insights upon which we can rely and try making some sort of the inference and take some sort of decisions, or probably even allow those systems to act on our behalf. Correct? That is the whole idea behind why we need generative AI. So when we need that, it's not something going to be happening on its own. It will require the kind of the data upon which human beings are going to be functioning on their regular basis, around their work, around their habits, around their behavior, and so on and so forth. When that happens, that is something which has to be translated to those models, to those systems, to those agents. And if it has not been done, how are those model systems and agents are going to be learning? They are not going to be doing anything on their own. It's not going to happen. Any magic is not happening over here. So to do that, they have to be fed with the data. Now, when they have to be fed with the data, the challenge comes around what kind of the data could be shared with those models, those systems and the agents, in terms of tomorrow if they leak any kind of the data while any prompt has been given to them, and if that data is confidential or if that data is sensitive to someone, is it going to be causing any sort of the risk or causing any kind of the harm or not? That's where comes the picture of having the synthetic data in place. How we try generating them? So there are synthetic generative adversarial networks available, which helps you to generate near real data but not actual data, and that is the reason why it goes as per its name, synthetic data. So what this do? So there are I mean like autoencoders, variational autoencoders, which rely on certain statistical algorithms. There are epsilon values, there are like arbitrary components which are being taken into factor to generate that synthetic data. When that synthetic data is getting generated, it does not mean that it is completely removing your personal information. It is trying to change your personally identifiable information to personal information. There is a huge difference between personally identifiable information and personal information. What do I mean by that is, like let's say suppose someone says that, Rushabh Mehta. Rushabh Mehta is a proper noun. Now that proper noun could be classified as a personal information to someone, but necessarily does not mean that it could be directly just solely based on that particular attribute of the personal information could be linked to an individual to identify someone. There could be like n number of Rushabh Mehtas out there in the world. That's where the job of synthetic data is to try removing that identifiable part, but still the data is going to be there. And now why we need that data? To train the model, to perform the analytics onto the model, onto the data sets that we have, the transaction records that we have. Why we need that? Because for example, we all need the suggestions, we all need the proper feeds coming to us. Like if right now probably I am on to the venture of purchasing the property, I'm quite comfortable in receiving the advertisements around the properties, but those needs to be targeted, those needs to be relevant to me. If it is not relevant to me, it might be a spam to me. The moment it is spam to me, I will start considering it in a negative manner, that the individual who is trying to share that data with me, from where did they get my email ID or phone number? How are they able to reach out to me? But the moment it is going to be targeted, something which is of my necessity, I would be requiring, over there I won't pursue that as a privacy risk. I will see that as more of value added to me because I am venturing and I am looking for that particular aspect. When that happens, for that kind of an algorithm to be processed by those companies, they need this kind of the models or the agents which are being trained upon some data. And to preserve the privacy of that training data, of the analytics being carried out, is where you require the synthetic data. Now coming to the question, sorry for the entire context, really sorry. Now the question, there are two questions, whether CISOs and the DPOs, basically like the leaders of the fraternities, should be treating this as the compliance shield. In my humble opinion, it is synthetic data is more kind of privacy preserving technique, which is going to be giving you the confidence of reducing down your privacy related risk, but at the end it is not going to be transferring the risk, or it's not going to be completely eliminating the risk. So still I would take a stand that it's not going to be acting as any kind of the legal checkpoint or probably a compliance shield altogether. It is just going to be helping you down, reducing your privacy risk. To answer the second question in terms of what all are the guardrails, so typically you try having the guardrails around your model itself or around your data. Like your synthetic data needs to be very fine tuned. What do I mean by that is it cannot be overfitted, meaning it cannot be too near to the real data. Otherwise, again the problem of re-identification and linking back to an individual increases. At the same time, it cannot be underfitted, meaning that it cannot generate any randomized value capturing no sense. If it is not making any sense, then what kind of the business value it's going to be providing? Then the model memorization, what Ritika ma'am was also mentioning, the model has the capability of memorizing the things over a period of time. So if it is going to be able to memorize couple of things, and then the individual who are relying on the output of that particular model, if they are able to perform any kind of the social engineering techniques or reconnaissance based on other attributes publicly available about the individuals, if there are going to be corner cases generating out of the data, like for example, let's say suppose I am using this particular entire thing for the hospital industry, medical healthcare industry. Over there, why I need to use the synthetic data is because I cannot expose the blood group of an individual. I cannot expose the illnesses and the diseases of the individuals. But at the same time, I want to carry out the researches to generate new vaccinations. I want to carry out the lab procedure diagnostics checks, and I also want to train my models themselves. For that I need the synthetic data, but when I'm trying to do that, I need to have the fine balance of not allowing my model to have the corner cases around, like there could be very few cases of an individual suffering from particular illness or the disease. The moment I then attach it with a particular gender, an age group and the region, then tomorrow even if it is the synthetic data, we are leaving the caveat of it being able to link it back to an individual. So the risk over there lies is around, like, the data is never going to be completely anonymized. It is still going to be remaining as the pseudonymization. The moment the data is still pseudonymized and not completely anonymized, it falls under the ambit of any kind of the data protection laws across the geographies. So I will rest my case over there. Sorry for the long answer.
Very insightful. I'm just wondering what Shiva would add on. What do you?
No, I didn't mean that. Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely right. I think he's clearly explained from the start to end. I think maybe the couple of points I can add in over here. I think he talked about synthetic data, right? To give it a smaller way, it's artificially generated data. Very simple. When it comes to synthetic data, it's not actual, but statistically, it is the pattern matching and all is there. So that's the reason we could be able to train. As for the recent research, because I'm a researcher, right? I was checking, including the GPTs, all put together, I'm not naming any one specific GPT. 40% of the data is from synthetic seeds. That's a fact. Number. Okay. So now, coming to the answer, short answer, synthetic data do reduce the risk when it comes to organization at CISO level, at the security force. But it is not a compliance shield for sure. It cannot be, right? So what you can do, couple of things, maybe I think he talked about, Rishabh already talked about privacy preserving, that should be built into the pipeline itself. This is the one we need to do. Second thing is membership audit, right? Membership, there is a easy way some hackers get in, they can able to regenerate from where they generated one, right? Membership one attacks are there. You can just Google it, you'll come to know that that's the one area they need to do it, right? From the CISO point of view. Third is, can you able to do the re-authentication? We can able to go back that audit, so it is common, quite common now. We cannot able to go back to the origin from where they generated. These are the couple of points what I can think of other than this what he talked about. Is entirely he covered. So from CISO perspective, these are the one they need to, obviously again, data related documentations. From where you're getting the data, where you're storing the data, is it anything is modified in between, all those information properly documented and keeping it. This what I can think of 3-4 area from CISO perspective. That's going to help you in long run. You can able to protect the company and the organization now.
Thanks for the great points, Shiva. I think that settles a lot of things around this question. Now, shifting gears, we want to move on to the governance and sovereignty challenge. I'll start with Ritika. So, with a lot of Gen AI models, right, often trained on cross-border data sets and deployed through hyperscaler infrastructure, data sovereignty is becoming increasingly theoretical, right? Every country wants to assert data sovereignty, but in reality it is very different. So what does a pragmatic or kind of a practical enforceable data sovereignty strategy look like for enterprise operating across multiple geographies, right? Multiple jurisdictions, and can existing regulatory frameworks keep pace with the speed of synthetic innovation? So much things are going around. So whether the existing regulations can keep up, and what is the best strategy for all these organizations to handle this? Over to you.
Thank you, Ramsar, for the question. So first I will start with what is data sovereignty and pragmatic sovereignty. So as Ramsar mentioned that data sovereignty ensures that the data that is originated in a country should remain under the legal authority of that country and should obey all the regulations and principles of that country only. So let's take an example here. So there is a European country which is using, European company which is using Gen AI tool which is based out of US, and it accidentally leaks the data of that EU company which is having a lot of EU citizens' data. So here the GDPR comes into picture and it talks about the violation because there is no security was in place. So here the sovereignty principle which says that this EU company should follow the regulations of that EU country. So then talking about a pragmatic sovereignty, so pragmatic sovereignty does not generally focuses on the physical location of the data, but it focuses majorly on the control, ownership and the enforceability. Which means, let's take one more example here. So let's say there is a bank which is having KYC data. So the bank stores its KYC data in India into a sovereign cloud, and the other data which is used for the Gen AI purposes for training the Gen AI, they will store it into some other cross-region data centers. So here the pragmatic sovereignty says that if a company is having data, it should be segmented into on the basis of its criticality. So what criticality means is we should segment the data like according to its personal information, sensitive information. So there is a 4-step approach that organizations can follow. So first step is they can do the data localization and segmentation. So as I mentioned, that segmentation can be based on the criticality, sensitivity and the personal information. Then they can do the data localization of it, and then they can decide the borders for that data. Then they should implement the privacy into the AI from its designing phase. What it means is that organizations should have the knowledge of what data is getting into the system, how it is being processed and what inputs they are providing. For that, they can implement controls like differential privacy, federated learning or access controls. Then the third step comes in where they have to focus on the vendors and hyperscalers. Because it is not possible that the all data can be stored in the same geography or the same region, because it's unrealistic, because Gen AI is using a lot of information or the data from different vendors and cloud providers and hyperscalers. So what organizations have to do is they have to implement TPAs. They have to check what all sub-processors are there what all sub-processors are there for the vendors and hyperscalers, and they need to check where they are storing the data. Then lastly, it is about continuous monitoring and auditing. So organizations have to do the regular checks, do the logging for traceability. If there is something happens, then they have to go back and trace who and what has been done. So they have to do the auditing part and the risk assessment for it. So as we all know that GDPR and DPDPA is principle-based regulations, and AI is moving too fast so that it is very difficult to trace AI. So yes, this is where the pragmatic sovereignty comes into picture, and organizations are following that.
Awesome, very practical insights. Over to you, Rishabh. Please keep it under 3 minutes.
No, absolutely. I forgot to realize during my previous answer that I could be the second in some other question. So probably she covered most of it. Just to add to whatever she mentioned, thanks for all the insights, Ritika ma'am. Typically, like the data is been fed into the AI, right? So what all are the basic components of the AI? Those are like your, machine learning, natural language processing, and those. All of them are statistically binded. And what happens is, how do I see that is, typically, to put it in a very layman analogy, it is Triveni Sangam, the literal Triveni Sangam, okay. Meaning, Gangotri, Brahmaputra and Yamuna coming together and becoming a Ganges, river of Ganges, Ganga. How can you say after becoming Ganga that which water was belonging to what? Is exactly what the data with AI is. You cannot really say that the data that was statistically getting created based on the feeds being provided to it and upon the training is coming from a particular region or a geography. It is very challenging to say that and identify and isolate it that way. And is where the entire challenges arise. So I'm like there aren't typical solutions straightforward, but at least what could be followed is you ask your hyperscalers, what Ritika ma'am was mentioning, your public cloud service providers, to have the availability zone in your particular data localization environment. And what you try doing is, again, have all the kind of the generative AI systems being processed within that particular availability zone. So that is going to be one of the aspects as the redundancy. Another challenge comes is around, what if, like, the data is going to be under transit or during the process. So there is something called as cloud sovereignty. So cloud sovereignty is provided by all the major public cloud service providers, including Azure, AWS, GCP. So you request them for that particular service to be enabled natively. The moment you try doing that, they are going to be flagging it out, whatever data is going to be under the ambit of a particular jurisdiction and needs to be safeguarded. It's going to be calling it out and will tell you that, like, this is what additional security controls you have to make it enabled as a part of the native services into your cloud environment. That is another aspect to it. Other than that, there is something called as, like, hardware security module, HSM, which is going to be completely physically isolated from your typical data and the model where it is going to be hosted onto the cloud. What does it mean is, in that particular HSM, you can have the encryption key management, your particular entire key management system, KMS, you put it into your HSM, completely isolated physically as a hardware, where those keys are going to be secured enough, those encrypted keys are going to be secured enough. But at the first very place, those encryption keys needs to be managed by the customers. Even if the public cloud service provider tell you that, like, we will be managing it on your behalf, let them do that. As an additional requirement, you ask them to bring your own key so that you have the power and the control onto your data. And no cloud administrator, even during the troubleshooting, is able to pick into your data. That is another aspect of, like, maintaining the data sovereignty, or in Ritika ma'am's language, pragmatic sovereignty. Apart from that, like, you need to be having the checks and balances around the standard contractual clauses and your binding corporate rules. The clauses now need to start calling out any kind of the data that is, like, not generating, without any kind of the automated processing, has to be separately called out and been labeled out. Why I am stating that is because, at least in DPDPA, the children's data, you cannot have the automated decision making onto children's data, right? And if you don't want to do that, you cannot apply any kind of the AI algorithms onto that explicitly only for the commercial purposes. So until and unless you are not going to be classifying it separately and labeling it out and telling your public cloud service provider that in the data set, this particular column or an attribute is something which is going to be defining the age gating and will have this transaction, has to be separately been kept outside of the ambit of the AI, is something which is practically very challenging in today's times. I will rest my thoughts over here in the constraint of time, but then this topic in itself, this is unsolved problem because it's a pragmatic sovereignty altogether. But yeah, there are solutions available wherein we can go with, like, HSM with the BYOK, data redundancy with the, outlining any kind of the children's data kind of the use cases. And the similar thing you can apply in any kind of the real-time industry as well. Like in banking industry, why would we be using the GenAI? Typically for a chatbot, or probably for sanctioning the loans, or probably for detecting the frauds, any of those. Now, all of this, if you look, are going to be requiring some sort of the historical data based on the entire record set as well as of a particular individual, to identify the CIBIL history, to identify the credit history, to identify the debits to expenses, and all of so on and so forth. The moment all of this is getting fed, do you think, like, for a company like MasterCard, for a company like American Express, for a company like, Visa, I'm naming them because they are the payment card industry companies. I'm not naming them to highlight them. Are they going to be having their cloud servers in a particular jurisdiction or geography? No, certainly not. They are going to be widespread, and they are not going to be bifurcating their processes to a particular data set in a particular server in a jurisdiction. That's where all of these controls and this kind of the pragmatic sovereignty mindset is going to be coming into the picture. Yeah. Awesome.
Well explained, Rishabh. I think both Ritika and Rishabh did a great job. I'm only wondering if they could be inspired by Ankit and put down their thoughts and draft a book, author a book that would definitely help, because the kind of knowledge both of them have definitely needs solidification, and the thought leadership can be expressed.
She was already talking about that. Maybe she will write one day.
Awesome. So let's come to the closing wrap-up question here. Under 1 minute, I would want each of the panelists to give a takeaway for all of us. I know many of you are a little restless because it's almost lunchtime. So keep your responses under 1 minute. So the question here is, if you could leave the audience with one non-negotiable principle that every organization must adopt today to responsibly balance Gen AI innovation with data sovereignty and privacy, what would it be? Starts with Shiva.
Okay, so when it comes to innovation, lot of clients, right, we did the innovation. When it comes to liability, they generally move away. Board says it's a technology problem. CTO says it's a legal issue. TPO says they never consulted before they're deploying it. These are the things going on. So my thought here it is, in this era, the enterprise who can be winning is not who bring the fastest solution. Who bring the trust first solution is going to be, stay here for long, for sure. When regulator or a customer or data principal ask the question, what do you do with my data? You should not say that we are figuring out.
Thank you.
In my opinion, it's like the organizations have to adapt, to have an adaptive governance so that they can implement privacy. So privacy is not to be an afterthought; it has to be a proactive approach that organizations needs to follow for AI development. So Gen AI is not a risk, but the risk majorly is the organizations which lacks to adapt these things, and they are not able to follow the regulations as well.
Awesome. Rishabh.
So AI is a reality. Don't be scared and afraid about it. Start experimenting. Start leveraging. Though we are sitting in the forum in the fraternity of cybersecurity and data protection, don't be scared about any of those jargons and any of those theories. Okay, let them be aside. Start leveraging. Let the business be enabled by start leveraging those. What do I mean by that is, allow them whatever they want to do. Allow business whatever they want to do with AI. Start enabling them to create the sandboxes. Enable them to have their own set of thought processes done in that particular isolated environment, in confidential computing, in encaved, completely isolated environment, which is not going to be internet facing, where no remote connectivity also is possible. Let them do whatever they want to do. Host that particular sandbox environment onto the local host and start leveraging. Don't be afraid about AI just because there are regulators, just because there are security repercussions and the concerns around there, just because privacy ramifications might end up. Let that be. But innovate, experiment, let business be running at its fastest pace. Let them experiment. Then you set the entire kind of the governance framework in place, and then issue those governance framework onto those things. Test it out again into the same sandbox environment, and then take it to the real-time environment. Again, test it out with carrying out the red teaming exercises. That's how the way forward will look like. Thank you.
Well put. As a true blue cybersecurity professional, very happy to hear a lot of practical insights from these experts. For me, it's been a great learning experience to sit with them and moderate this panel. I'm sure you all agree with me. We all got a lot of insights, and it was a good time we spent here with these amazing folks. So data sovereignty is absolutely an important concept. Back in 2018-19, when the second draft of the DPDP Act, in whatever fashion it was called, I remember the earlier act was called PDPB bill, right? Something like that, Personal Data Protection Bill. So even in that, there was a huge tug of war with the government of India and tech giants. They didn't want Indian government to control data. So even before the term data sovereignty became popular, it was called data localization, right? The term was very clear, data localization. So Government of India, when they drafted the earlier bills of data privacy, legislation, they were very clearly saying whatever data you collect from Indian citizens should reside in India. You have a data center, have it here. Whereas the tech giants were saying, no, we will keep in our home country, whether it is US or Australia or UK, we'll keep it there, which government didn't agree. Then lot of negotiations and lobbying, and finally government compromise, stating that okay, you can have dual, one copy in India, one copy in your home country. So data sovereignty is, we are long way to go. We have a lot of things, and AI adds more complexity to this. And I'm sure we all got a lot of insights which we can apply in our daily work in whatever we do around AI and data privacy. So thank you all for being patient audience, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks. Yes. Done.
Questions you want to take?
Go.